Hi and welcome to my YouTube channel. So today we are going to be building a simple login and registration system using Django. So this is all the code we are going to write, our templates, our views, our URLs. So basically this is all the code that we are going to write. Let me now show you the finished product. So if we try to visit the home page, we are going to be redirected to the login page. Why? Because we actually need to log in before we can access the home page. So that is one of the features that we're going to be implementing. And if we don't have an account, we can also come here and click register. So here we can register a new user now. So let's say I want to register a new user. I'll say Solomon, and last name I'll say Digi, and username, let's say username I'll say boy. I don't know what to give it. So I'll just put a random thing for email, and password, I'll name it Deji. Let me make sure it types that well, DEJI. So once I hit submit, it's going to redirect us to the login page that says, okay, this user has been created now and saved in database. So let's now log in with the details because we're redirected to the login page. So the username that we used was boy, and the password we created is Deji. So once we submit, you can see that we've been redirected to the home page. We didn't do anything on the home page since we're basically talking about, or since we're basically going to talk about registration and logging in. And we can also log out here. Once we log out, you can see we are being redirected to the login page. And if we try to access the home page, we can see we are still going to be redirected to the login page because we need to log in. And then this is register. In register, it will say already have an account. If you have an account, you can come here and click login and you'll be redirected here. So this is what we are going to be building in this project. Now, if you want to get all the code, there's a link in the description below that's going to take you to my GitHub where you can get all the code. So stay tuned, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please give me a thumbs up and subscribe and share for the YouTube algorithm. Thank you. Hi and welcome to my YouTube channel. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about Django authentication and user creation. So we're going to be making reference to the official documentation provided on the Django website. So we're going to start creating our projects now and setting it up. So the first thing we're going to do is create a folder that's going to house everything. So I'm going to name the folder tutorial. And then I'm going to cd into tutorial. Now the next thing we need to do is create a virtual environment for this Django projects that we're working on. And to do that, we need to install a module. We're going to use this particular module to create the virtual environment. So I'm going to say pip install pipenv. Now once you run this command, it's going to install the pipenv module for you. And after doing that, what we now need to do is create a virtual environment. So we'll do that by saying pipenv shell. So once we run that command now, it's going to create a virtual environment for us. The next thing we need to do right now is we need to install Django. So let me just make sure I am connected to the internet. So we're going to run the command pip install Django. So once we run this, it's going to install the Django web framework for us inside this particular virtual environment. So I'm going to pause and wait for this to install. So we have successfully installed Django. The next thing we need to do is start our project. So I'm going to say django-admin start project, OJECT, start project. So I'm going to name it authentication. So once we do that, we're going to create a project folder for us. Then we need to cd into authentication. Then we need to start our app. So we say python manage.py start app, and we'll name it auth system. So once you press enter, it's going to create an app folder. Then we're going to open it with our code editor. Now I'm going to assume that you're already familiar with this, with the basics setting up Django project. So I'm just going to brush through and not really pay too much attention and not really dwell on the setting up. So we'll come to our settings and we need to tell Python that we have this particular app installed. So we'll come to install apps and say auth system. And the next thing that we're going to do is make sure you save that. Next thing that we're going to do is we're going to set up our URLs at project and app level. So we're going to come here and say, okay, from Django.urls, import path, and after importing path, import include. That is, we want to tell Python that we need you to check for a URLs file inside our application. So that's what we'll do now. So we'll say path and then we would leave this empty and we'll say include LUDE. Include inside here we would say auth system dot URLs, and we're going to save this. After doing that, we'll come to our application folder and create a Python file named urls.py. And inside here, we're going to say from Django.urls import path. So let's change this I to O. So we'll say import path. And after doing that, we'll say URL patterns is equal to create this empty list over here. And let's save this. So we'll go back to our terminal and we're going to run our server. So we'll say python manage.py run server. So this is going to run our server for us. So we'll just copy this link that they give us, come to our browser, create a new tab and paste it in there. Now once we paste this, you can see installation successfully worked. Now let's start talking about building our application. So since this is a login register system that we're doing, creating users and authenticating users, let's now go to our views.py. And we need to create two views. We need to create three views. Number one is the home page, number two is the login view, and number three is the register view. So we're going to be using function-based views. So we'll say define and would name this home page. And in here, we're going to pass in requests. And for now, we're just going to say pass. So the next view we need to create is the register view. So we're going to say def register. And we'll pass in request here. request, yes. And then we'll also say pass for now. And then we'll create a login view. And we'll pass in request here also. And we would also say pass. Now, anytime you are creating a view, it's always a three-step process. You create a view, you create a template for it, and then you map it to a URLs. So what we need to do now is that we actually need to create a templates folder that is going to house all our HTML code. So we'll come to auth system, which is our application, and we'll create a folder and name it templates. And inside templates, we are going to create another folder and we'll name it auth system. We're naming it the name that we give our application. And inside auth system, we'll create an index.html file. Index.html. Since it's the home page, that's why we're naming this index.html. So the next thing that we now need to do is we need to go to our settings. And we need to tell Django that we have a templates folder present. So inside this dirs in line 58, we're just going to pass in templates, and then we're going to save this. Control save. Once we go back to our views, at this home page place, we're going to just say return render, and inside here we'll pass in requests, and then we're going to pass in the templates. So again, say auth_system/index.html. that is this index.html file that we created earlier. So after that, we'll now pass in after that, we'll pass in an empty context dictionary and save this. Now remember, it's a 3-step process. You create the view, you create the template, you map it to a URL. So I'm going to go to the URLs, and at the top here we'll say from .views import home page, and then in the URL patterns over here we're going to say path, and I'm just going to name it home. I'll put a / there. After that, we need to pass in the view name, so we'll say home page, and after home page we'll just say name is equal to home - page. So once we save this and we come to our views and make sure we saved that, let's just make sure our server is running. Okay, our server is running. If we now go to /home, okay, if we go to /home, we're going to see that the page loads, but there's nothing on it. So let's now start adding some things to our HTML file. So if we come to this HTML file, there's a shortcut that we can do right now to just paste some HTML code. If we do this and we press enter, we have this on the page. So how do I do that? For those that are using VS Code, they are going to hit shift, and then you are going to hit the exclamation mark button, and this is going to come up. Just click this first one and it's going to bring this out. So now we have all this. Let's just create a h1 tag, and let's say hello world. And once we save this and come back to our browser, once we reload, you can see we have hello world there. So we successfully created a view, created the templates, and mapped it to a URL. So this is the home page, hello world. We now need to start writing code that is going to help the mechanism of registering and logging. So inside register, we now need to create another template file and name it register.html. So still inside auth system, we'll create another file and name it register.html. And we'll press enter. So now we have the second HTML file created. Inside the register view, what we're going to do is we're going to say return render. So basically, I'm just going to copy this because it's the same thing, and I'm going to paste it here. Only that it's not going to be index.html, it's going to be register. reg. So let's save this, and as usual, we'll go to the URLs and we'll create another path. We'll create another URL for this particular view that we created. We also need to import it. So we'll say .views, from .views import homepage and import register. So we need to put a comma here. So in here, we're going to say path, and we would say register /. And after doing that, we're going to pass in the view name, register. Let's cancel this. And after doing that, we would say name is equal to register page. Okay, so I'm just going to pause here. I will be right back. Okay, so after doing this now, we're just going to save it. And let's go to the register page and just add some text there. So let's create a h1 tag, and in here we're going to say register page. Let's save this and let's make sure our server is running. Okay, it's running, fantastic. So once we go to the Chrome page and go to /register, it should bring us to this register page. So we can see we created a new template, view, and URL successfully. So we now need to actually create the form that is going to collect the data from the user. That is the first name, last name, username, email, and password. So what we're going to do is that we're now going to go to the register page and we're going to start writing our HTML code. So we're going to create a div. We're going to say .form, and inside this div we're going to create a form. So we're going to put form action. We'll ignore that and we'll say method is equal to post. So after doing that, we now need to start adding items. So the first item that we'll collect is the first name. So we'll say label for f name, and in here we'll say first first name AME, and then after that we'll now create an input statement, or we'll put an input tag. Sorry, I'm used to saying input statements in Python. So it's going to be input type text. Then we'll create a placeholder and we'll say enter your first name, and then after doing that we need to now say name is equal to f name. Now I'm going to explain in future. You are going to see why we're putting this name is equal to f name there. So once we save this and we go back to the web page and reload, we're going to see I already have our first input tag displayed. So what we need to do is now we need to copy this, and then we're going to paste for last name, username, email, and password. So we're going to come down and start editing each of these fields one by one. So this one we're going to change from first name to last name, and this is going to be input type text also. So here we'll say enter your last name, and we'll change it from f name to s name. Then here we're going to say username, ERN. So this tag is going to accept the username. So instead of saying enter a username, we would say create a user name, and then here we'll just name this uname, and then the next one is going to be email, and the last one is going to be password. So I'll change this to email, and from here text I'll change this to email, input type email, and then from first name we'll change it to enter your email, and here we'll change this from f name to email. So the next thing that we need to change is this last one. So it's going to be password. So we'll say enter password. So here we'll change it from input type text to password, and then here we'll say create a password. Create a password, and we'll change this from f name to pass. We'll just name it pass. And at the end of this, we need to create a button that we're going to use to submit everything. So we'll say input, and we'll say type is equal to we'll say is it button? Okay, yeah, button. Or you know what, let's just put the button tag there. So we'll say button and we'll say submit, and inside this button tag we need to define the type, and we're going to say submit. So once we save this and we go back to our page and we reload this, we can see everything is now matched together on the page. So what we need to do is go back to our Chrome. I will be right back. And so we need to start adding BR tags so that we can separate each line from each other. So we'll come over here and say BR. We'll come to this next line also, say BR. They are line breaks. Excuse me. So we'll save this, and when we come back to our browser and reload, we can see now that everything looks okay. It's not like everything is on a line. Now I'm going to go ahead and just add a little bit of styling to this. If you want to skip the CSS section of this, you can go ahead and skip it. Check the link below and you'll see the chapters. Sorry, not the link, the description, and you see the chapters have been put there. So I'm just going to start styling everything. So inside the auth system folder, let's create a folder named static. And inside static, let's create another folder named CSS. And then inside the CSS folder, let's create a file named style.css. So it is inside the CSS file that we're going to be writing all our code. So we'll come to the top of our HTML page, somewhere around here, and then we would say load static. We need to write this line of code. If we do not write this line of code, all our CSS isn't going to be displayed. That's all our styling that we're adding to our HTML isn't going to be displayed on the web page. So the next thing we need to say is link rel style sheet. Then inside the href, we will pass in our curly brackets. I will say static. I will say css /style.css. So we're going to save this. We will go back and reload the page. Now nothing changes because we haven't added any style to our page. So we'll come here and split the screen so that we can see exactly everything that we're styling. So now let's start styling the body. So we're going to give the body a background color of gray. So let's say BCK, everything is gray. And then we're going to say padding 0, margin 0, and box sizing. And we're going to name the box sizing border box. So we're going to save this. When we go back to our page and we reload it, nothing is happening. And that is because I guess there is a line that there are some lines of code that we're supposed to add inside the settings.py file. So we're going to first go to the settings.py file. We would come here and go to the settings inside the project folder. So we're going to scroll down to the bottom, and we're first going to start by importing OS. Import OS. Then earlier I went to this website because I suspected that we were going to have the same issue. So you are going to see this line of code written in the description below, or you can just copy what I'm writing. So I would copy this, go back to my settings.py and paste it here. So we're telling Python that okay, we have a static folder and you should check there for our static files like CSS, JavaScript, and our pictures. So we're going to save this and let's make sure our server is running. Now let's go back to our web page. Let's reload. That is strange. It's still not changing. So let me go back to my register.html and make sure that everything is well written. Okay, so load static, href static. style.css. Let me check here. The body. Oh, I spelled body wrong. So let's change this to D and let's save it. So let's go back to our page, and once we reload, you can see that it has turned gray. So we're going to add more styling now. Remember, we put the form inside a div and we named the div form. So we'll come here and start styling it. We'll say dot form, and let's first give it a weight of let's say 600 pixels to see how everything will look. Let's save it and let's give it a background color of white. So background color of white, let's save that. The hex code is hashtag FFF. So once we come back, let's see. Okay, we need to widen the width. Okay, we need to give it height also. My CSS isn't so good, so let's give it a height of 600 pixels, and then let's reload the page. Okay, 600 is a bit much. Let's give it 500 and see how it looks like. Reload the page, and okay, that looks better. So I'm just going to put this h1 actually inside this form, inside this form tag, so that it can be inside the div. So it's inside. The next thing that we need to do is now that we need to center everything in the middle of this div. So that is easy. So we're going to come here. I'll give it a display of flex, and then we'll come down and give it a justify content. We'll say center and center, and we'll say align items, and we'll say center also. So once we save this and we go back to our browser and reload, we can see everything is now in the middle, but we can see the h1 tag and the form. It's now in the middle. They are side by side because we gave everything align items center and justify content center. So we can do that by changing the flex direction. So we'll say flex direction and we'll change it to column. So once we save this and we go back and reload, we can see register page is up and this one is down. Now we want this white div to be in the center of the page. So what we are going to do is we are going to come to the body, to this body element that we were styling, and we will also give this a display. We'll give this a display of flex. We'll say display flex, justify contents. Justify content center. And then align items center. Let's say center. Once we save this and come back and reload, let's check why it's not in the middle. So we say justify content center, align items center. Okay, let's try something. Let's put this form div inside another div. Let's say dot parent. Now I'm just trying something just to see if it will work. And let's move down, and here let's paste this. So we need to indent all this well so that we have clean code. So we'll indent this well, and let's save it. Now let's transfer all this styling to this dot parent to see how it is. Dot parent. Now remember I said my HTML and CSS, my CSS isn't so strong. So let's see what that gives us. Okay, let me just close this. So once we reload the page, nothing still happens. Okay, let's give this a height. Let's give it a height of, let's say, 80 VH. Control save. Just to center this. My CSS is bad. Okay, let's say 100. Okay, so now we have this somehow in the center of the page. So this is what we want it to look like. Now we actually need to start styling these input tags. You can see everything is joined together and we don't want it that way. So what we're going to do is we will move down and then we're going to start styling the input tags and the labels. So what we're going to say is we'll say input, and it's just going to go into the HTML and it's going to style all the input tags. So we're going to say let's first give it a margin of, let's see how 10 pixels will look like. So let's reload the page and see. Okay, this looks okay. Now let's give it a padding of, let's say, 10 pixels. Let's see how that will look like. Okay, that's not so bad. And then let's give them, all of them, a width. Let's say a width of 200 pixels. Let's see how to look like. Okay, let's widen it. Let's say 300. Okay, that looks better. And let's give them a border radius. A border radius of 5 pixels. And we will reload. It's too thick. Okay. After that, we will say border and let's say none. And let's reload. Oh, okay. Sorry, let's change that to border style. Okay, let's save that. Come back and reload. Okay, I know what we're going to do. Let's remove this line. I will come back to, we'll say border. And let's say 1px solid. 1px solid Dodger blue. Let's save that and see how they look. Okay, that looks better than before. So what else do we need? Should we style? Okay, let's style this button over here. So we'll come down and style the button right now. So we'll say button, and then we're going to give it a padding of 10 pixels, and let's give it a background color of Dodger blue, and we'll give the text a color of white, and we'll say where is hashtag FFF. So let's see how that looks like. Okay, we still don't like how it looks like. So I would say border none. Let's save that and reload. Okay, that looks better. Let's make it round, or should we make it round? Yes, let's make it round. So we'll say border radius and let's make it 5 pixels. So we'll save this and reload. Okay, that looks better. But I want to put this button in the middle. Can I do that? Are my skills good enough for that? Will this work? Align self-center. Let's see. Okay, that didn't work. Okay, let's try justify self-center. Let me try if that will work. Okay, it didn't work. We'll just leave the button there. My CSS isn't so strong, like I said earlier. So this is going to be our register page. So what we need to do right now is that we need to create a super user so that we have access to the admin page. So let's just come here and stop our panel, our server from running. So we'll say python manage.py create super user. And once you do that, what did it say? Okay, no such table as auth user. Okay, I think we need to run our migrations. So python manage.py make migrations. Okay, let's run that. So let's say python manage.py migrate. So we needed to have done this at the beginning of the project. Sorry about that. So this is going to apply all the migrations to the database. So now let's say python manage.py create super user. I hope I spelled that right. Okay, yeah, it's asking us for username now. So I'm going to say test. I'm not going to put in an email. I'm going to put the password as test. And then I'm going to say y. So now it says super user successfully created. Let's run our server. We'll say python manage.py run server. And then once we do that, let's copy this. Let me copy this link. And we'll create a new tab right here. We'll paste it and say /admin. So basically, this is the admin page of Django. So we'll say test, and the password is test. So let's log in right now. Let me say never. So if we check the users, right now we only have one user, which is test, the one we created by doing python manage.py create super user. So we are going to be able to monitor the amount of users that have been created from this Django admin panel. So what we now need to do is we now actually need to write the code that is going to get all the inputs from this form and actually save it to the database. So we'll come back here to our code. Let's close this. So we'll come back here and we'll go to our Views.py. We now actually need to start getting all the data from the form. Remember, in the register form, we gave it a method of post. So in the views right now, we're just going to say if request dot method is equal to posts. So put a colon here. We are now going to start getting all the fields, that is all the data that the user passed into these fields. So the first one is first name. So we're going to say f name is equal to request dot posts dot get, and then inside this parenthesis we're going to pass in f name. Now why exactly are we passing in f name inside here? If we go back to our HTML register.html, remember I told you that we are giving it a name, f name, and we are going to use it in future. Now the reason why I'm giving it this f name is that it is what we are going to use to grab whatever value that the person imputed and pass it and equate it to this particular variable. Why are we getting an error here? Okay, so now we've grabbed the first one, which is f name. We now need to grab the second name. So we'll say L name, which stands for last name, is equal to request dot post dot get. Now there's another way to do this request dot post dot get. We can also say request dot post, and inside this list we'll just pass in the what was the name we gave it. We gave it s name. we can just pass in s name like this, and this equally works as fine as this first line, but I like using this other way. So replace the post dot get, and inside the parentheses we're going to pass in s name, and then the next thing is the username, and we use the uname. So we'll come down and say user underscore name is equal to request dot posts dot get, and inside here we'll say uname. So we're saying request dot post dot get because we want to get all the data that this user is inputting. Now another thing that we need to add that is very crucial is that on top of this form we need to add something, CSRF token, CSRF underscore token. Now this is just this is just a security, how will I put it now? This is just a security measure that Django takes. If you don't put the CSRF token there, it's going to throw an error. So basically, anytime you are using an HTML form in the template, always make sure that you put CSRF token at the top of the form. So we have grabbed the username. Now the next thing we need to grab is the email and then password. So we would say, let me just do Alt Shift username and password. So we'll change this to email. I will say request.post.get email, and in the next line we'll name this password. I will say request.post.get pass. We're saying pass because in here it's pass that we used. So now we've actually collected and grabbed all these details from the user. How do we now actually create a new user in the database using all this data that we have that were collected from the user or from the person that wants to sign up as a user? If we go to the official Django documentation, it's talking about user objects, and we can see that the primary attributes are username, password, email, first name and last name, and we can see that we have all that. We created a form that collects all these fields. Now the next thing that is that if we move down, we can see creating users. The most direct way to create users is to use the included create user helper function. So here it says from django.contrib.us.modules import user, and it says user is equals to user.objects.create user. So this is how we can actually create a user. We need to import this. So we'll just copy it, and then we'll go back to our code. We'll go to the top and import this. And if you go to the browser here, we can see that a variable has been created, and then the variable is equal to user.objects.create user. That is why we're creating a new user, and then John is being passed in, then the email and the password. So this is the username, email, password. Now anytime we're creating a user using this method, inside this parenthesis here, it always accepts three parameters. It accepts the username, the email and the password. So if you now want to go ahead and create the first name and the last name, you want to save the first name and the last name in the database, you do user.last name is equal to whatever the person imputed, and user.first underscore name is equal to whatever the person imputed. So we're going to be doing this now. We would say we'll come down and say new user is equal to user.objects.create underscore user. Let's make sure we're doing that right. Okay, I spelled create wrong. create create underscore user. So let's check to make sure we're doing that right. User.objects.create underscore user. So let me copy this. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. So user.objects.create user. Now we need to pass in the username, email and password. So we'll say user underscore name And after that, we'll pass in email, and then we'll pass in password. And then another thing that we need to now do is that if we come here, we can see it says user.last name and user.first name. So to save the first name and the last name, we'll come down and say new underscore user dot first, the first underscore name is equal to f name, and then we'll come down and say new underscore user dot last name is equal to l name. And let's just save this. If we come back to the documentation they gave us, it's the same thing that we're doing, it's the same thing that they did that we're doing. So the next thing we now need to do is, after we've created the instance, we now need to actually save this to the database by saying user.save. So we'll come back and say new user.save. So after doing all this, is going to save this particular new user to the database. So let's just save it. And then once the new user has been created, we want to return a HTTP response. Now for that, we need to go to the top and say from Django.response RESP. Let me just check to make sure. From Django.response import HTTP. I think I let me just check to make sure. From Django.response import HTTP response. Okay, from Django.response. It's not showing. Okay, anyway, once the user has been, let's remove that. Once the user has been saved, we now want it to return the user to the home page, or we want to redirect the user to the login page, so that once the user has been created, we now want the user to log in using the login page. So what we need to do now is that we need to create a new file inside a new templates file, and we need to name it login.html. And then after doing login.html, we will now come back to the views, and where we see this login, we're just going to say return render, and in here we're going to pass in request, and then we'll pass in the template's name. We'll say auth system /login.html, and then after doing that, we'll pass in an empty context dictionary, and let's save this. So in the login.html, we're just going to say in here we'll create a h1 tag, and we'll say login. So we're still going to change this later, it's just temporary. So after doing that, the third step and the last step is that we need to go to the, as usual, we need to go to the URLs and map it to a URL. So we'll say import login. And after doing this, we'll just put a comma here, and we'll say path, and it's going to be login, and they will pass in the function name login. And after doing that, so we'll just say name is equal to login page. So we'll save this, make sure we save this our HTML file, and come back to the views. So now let's check our login page. So we'll say /login, and you can see we have our login page is working. So let's go back to our register page. Now, after the user has been created, we actually want this user to be redirected to the login page. So what to say, from Django.shortcuts import render, and I want to import redirect. So I would like to go and check how to import the redirects library. I don't know where it is, so we'll be back in a short while. Okay, so from here we need to say comma. I have seen how to import it. It's going to be redirect. So let's save this. And what we need to do is that we'll now come down and say, okay, after creating this new user, we want you to redirect the person to the login page. So we say return return, return redirect ECT. And then inside this parenthesis, we now need to specify where we want to redirect which page we want to redirect this person to. Now, since we want to redirect the person to the login page, we are going to use this login dash page here. So we'll copy this and then we'll go to the views and we'll pass this in. So let's save this. Now we've written all this code. It's now left for us to try and see if it works. So let's make sure our server is running fine. Okay, let's go to our browser and reload. It's the moment of truth. So let's say first name Ayodeji, last name Adeshola. Okay, create a username. Let me say Digi12. Enter email Adeshola Ayodeji at gmail.com and enter password. I'll just say Digi12. So let's hit submit right now, and it says CSRF token. So this is what I was talking about earlier, that if you don't post the CSRF token, it's going to say forbidden. We put it earlier, so let me just check to see what the error is. Let me just cut it and put it in here. So I would save this. Now let's go back and reload the page. Let's try now. We'll say first name Ayodeji, last name Adeshola, username Deji12, email. We'll pass this in and enter password. I will say Deji12 also, and let's hit submit. It can say lname is not defined. So let's check our Views.py. I think we made a mistake there. So let's see the error. It said name lname not defined. Let's check our browser. The last name is equal to lname. New user dot last name. Okay. We have seen where the error is. So new user dot last name is equal to lname. Okay, I didn't spell lname here well. Name. You see all these little mistakes that can drive somebody crazy. Okay, so let's save that and try to create a new user again. So let's say cancel. Let's just, okay. So first name is going to be Ayodeji, last name Adeshola, username Deji12, email this, and password. I'm going to use Deji12 also. So once we submit it, we can see we have another error. Let's check. It said unique constraint field auth_user.username. Okay, let's check. User_name, email, password. So let's check the documentation to see. It says John, comma. Okay, so let's do something now. Let's say user name is equal to this, and let's say email is equal to that, and we'll say password is equal to that. So let's save right now and let's reload and see, hopefully, if that will clear the error. So we're still getting the error. Let's try to do this. Okay, first name Ayodeji, last name Adeshola, username Deji12, email this, and last name David 12. Let's see. So we're still getting the error. Okay, I'm just going to quickly solve the error and we're going to come back. So I am back and we're just going to try something. Let's remove this and change this to name, and we're going to remove this username here, and we'll also change this to name, since we're passing in the username, the email, and then the password. So let's save this, Control save, and go back to our Chrome and reload. So what we'll do is we'll just pass in Ayodeji Adeshola. Username, we'll pass in Deji12. Email, we'll pass in this, and then for password, we'll pass in Deji12. So once we submit this, we can see it's redirected us to our login page. And then let's go back to our admin page. That's the backend, the admin page, and refresh. And we can see we have a new user, Deji12. And we can see the first name is Ayodeji, last name is Adeshola, and the email is what we typed in. So you can see that this works really well. And then we've been able to create a new user from our front end, that is this whole form that we created. Now that's exciting. So we've been able to actually create this login, this user creation system. The next thing that we now actually need to do is we need to come down and create the login system. Here is the registering system. So what we need to, okay, let me just remove this excess space. Okay. So now what we need to do also is that we need to create a form that is going to house the a form like this that is going to be a login form. So what we're essentially going to do is that we'll come to our register.html and we're going to copy all this. Okay, let's just copy everything from this parents, the whole div. We'll just say Ctrl C, and inside our login.html, we're going to paste everything inside there with Ctrl V. Let me make sure I copied everything. Oh, I didn't copy everything right. So from the top here, we'll copy every single thing. Yeah, Ctrl C. And in here, we'll say Ctrl V. So instead of saying register page, we'll change this to login page. Login page, and then we only need two fields, two input fields, that is the username and password. So you only need these two, and for the rest we'll just delete the rest, just remove the rest, and then we'll change this to username. We'll say username, and in the next place we'll say password. So we need to change this first placeholder to enter your username. And then we'll change this to uname. And then in this next line, we'll say password. We'll change this from text to password. And here we'll say enter your password. And then in the name place, we can just say pass. So we'll save this now. Once we go to our login page, we'll say /login, and then we can see that we have this page here. But we can see the CSS is not loading. Now let's check why the CSS is not loading. If you go to the top here, we can see that we need to link it. It's the reason why the CSS is not loading is because it's not linked. So we'll just come in and copy this line, Ctrl C, come to our login page and just paste it. Once we save this and go back and refresh the page, voila, we can see the CSS has loaded. But let's go back to our register page. We also want something down here where it's going to say already have an account. or if you say already have an account, now say login. So once you click the login link, it will take you to the login page. So we can do something like that. Let's go to the register.html. So at the bottom, what we're going to do is we'll create a paragraph tag and we'll say already have an account, ACCOUNT. And the next thing we'll say is we'll create an anchor tag. And then for this, we need to link the particular link that we're going to put here. We need to link it to the login page, and I will show you how. We'll just put URL here. URL. Okay, sorry, we need to first pass in the we need to pass in the percentage sign. So we'll say URL space, then in quotes. Let's go to our urls.py file. We now need to copy this login page. We need to copy it. And we'll go back to our register.html and we'll paste it there. So before this closing anchor tag, we're just going to say login. So let's save this. Once we go to our page now and reload, we can see already have an account, login, and once we click it, it's going to take us to the login page. Now this is fantastic. We don't need to be coming here to change the URLs. So now we've actually created this form and it's looking okay. We now need to do the same thing that we did in our views. We need to get the data from the user. So we'll just come here and copy this. We'll say Ctrl+C and we'll come here. So if request.method is equal to post, it is post. So request dot, this is going to be the username. We'll change this to user. We'll just change this to name. And here we'll say uname. We're saying uname because in the login.html we put uname here. So we'll say uname and then here we'll say password and we'll say request.post.get pass and we'll save this. So this is how we're going to grab the data. Now, how do we actually authenticate that these users exist in the database? How do you do that? We now need to import some other libraries or some other things from Django. So we would say from django.contrib.auth import authenticate. So authenticate is what we are going to be using to authenticate these users. If we go to the official documentation and we scroll down to where they talk about authenticating users, here we can see that use authenticate to verify a set of credentials. It takes credentials as keyword arguments, username and password for the default case. So now we are saying that we already read that we can use this authenticate to verify whether the user exists in the database. And if we see their usage, they said they first imported it and then they created a variable, and inside that variable they had put username is equal to John and password is equal to whatever password it is. So what this does is that it's going to take these two credentials. It's now going to go to the database and check if this user actually exists. And if the user exists, it's not going to return none. But if the user does not exist, it's going to return none. That's why there's a conditional here. If user is not known, that is, if user exists in a database, then do this. So this is exactly what we are going to do now. So we're going to come down. Since we've imported the authenticates, we're going to come down and then we're going to say user is equal to authenticate, and inside here we're just going to pass in name and password. Okay, oh, this is a double, it shouldn't be a double parenthesis. Okay, so we have name and password. We now need to write another conditional to check if the user is not known. So we'll say if user is not none. Then we want you to log in this user. How do we actually log in the user? We need to now import another thing. Here, where we have from Django.contrib.auth.authenticate, we need to say, after authenticate, we need to import login, and then we also need to import logout. So what we will now say here is, we will come down and say, if user is not known, we now want to log this user in. So we'll say login, and then we'll say user. That is, we want to log this user in. So we need to pass in, I think we need to pass in request here also. So let's check the documentation. So how to log a user in, it should be somewhere here. Okay, authenticating web request. So here it says how to log a user in. So here it says we can use this login method. It says if you have an authenticated user you want to attach to the current session, this is done with a login function. So we can see here that what they did, it's exactly what we are doing. They grabbed whatever the user was inputted through the form, and they say request your post, username and password. Then they say user is equal to authenticate requests, username and password. Then you are now saying if the user is not known, that is, if the user exists, we want you to log in the user. So what we need to pass in is that we need to pass in request inside this authenticate here. So we'll say request and then comma. So basically this is everything we have done. So after we have logged in the user, we now want to redirect the user to the home page. Remember, we created a home page at the top here, dev home page. So that's exactly what we are going to do. So I'm now going to say return redirect, and then we want to redirect this person to the home page. Okay, sorry, return redirect. And once we go to the URLs, we can see the home page the name that we give the URL is home-page. So we'll copy that, come to the views, and in quotes we're going to paste it. So we're saying, okay, redirect the user to the home page if the user is not known. So else, if the user is known, else if the user does not exist, we want you to return something. So we now need to import something else. We need to say from Django.http.response import from Django.http import http response. Okay, so what we're now going to say is else, that is, if the user does not exist, we would say return http response, and inside here we would say error, user does not exist. Then let's save that, Control save. So now we've already written the mechanism for logging in. How do we actually now know that this works? Let's now test everything to see that it works perfectly. So let's make sure our server is running, and let's go back to our browser. Let's reload, and then remember that in the in our admin we can see that we have two users now. The first user is the one we created when we did python manage.py create super user. That is the super user. And then the second user we have is one we created when we used this form. So what we now want to do is we now want to actually log in using the credentials that we used for this Digi12. So username Digi12 and password Digi12. So once we submit this, okay, it takes from 0 to 1 positional arguments, but 3 were given. Okay, what we need to do is we need to remove, let's check. We need to remove this request over here. So let's save it and let's try again. And then let's say digit 12 and digit 12. So once we hit submit, it's still giving us the same error. Authenticate. Okay, let's check our terminal to see. Authenticate takes from 0 to 1 positional arguments, but 2 were given. Let's check the documentation to see. So we have authenticate login, then user is equals to authenticate request, username equals username, password equals password. Okay, let's try something. So we have authenticate username is equal to username and password is equal to password. So let's say let's check again. So we have request this. So we say request comma user. Okay, so let's make sure our terminal, our server is running. Let's try again to see. So say digit 12, and here also we say digit 12. Let's see, and you can see it's worked exactly as we wanted it to. Now, because the user was valid, it's now redirected us to the home page. That's what we said here, return redirect home page. Now let's try to input wrong details here. Let's first reload. Let's say digit 12, and then let's just type in something weird here. Let's click submit, and you can see it says error, user does not exist, because we told us that else if the user does not exist, we want you to return a HTTP response and say error, user does not exist. So let's now log in with the right details. We'll say digit 12. So let's log in. So we're in the home page. Let me just change this from hello world to, let me say, home page, and let's reload. Let's see, did I save it? Control save. Okay, and then we have home page here. Now another thing I want to take note of is that if I just go to a new tab and I try to go to the home page, we can see that I'm going to the home page and it's not even asking me to log in. Now what we are going to talk about now is actually restricting pages to only logged in users. So what we need to do is that we need to import something else. We need to go to our views, and at the top here we need to come down, and then we need to say there's something else we need to import. Okay, we'll say from Django.contrib.auth.decorators. From Django.contrib.auth.decorators, we want to import login required. Why are we getting this error? Let's just delete to see if it goes away first. So from Django.contrib.auth.decorators, import login required. Let's check to see if our terminal is working fine. Now what we now need to do is that we now need to tell Python that to some of these pages we want you to restrict them to only logged in users, so that if a user is not logged in, then look at it, just red light. If a user is not logged in, then he or she cannot access this particular page. So what we need to do is that at the home page, all we need to do is we need to say at login underscore required, and then we need to go to our settings and we need to specify the login page. That is, we need to specify where we want the person to be redirected to if he or she has not logged in yet. So if the person wants to access the home page and this person has not logged in, the person is going to be, the user is going to be redirected to the login page. So we're now going to say login underscore URL is equal to, we now need to go to our URLs file, and then we need to copy this, and then we'll go back to the settings.py, and we'll, in quotes, we'll put this there. And when we save this, sir, oh, sorry about that, my dad called me. Okay, so we've specified the login URL now, which is login page, this one right here. So let me just make sure that I saved it and everything. Okay, so we've put that login required here. So what our code should do presently now is that if I try to visit this particular page, even though I am not logged in, it should give an error. So let me log out in my in the admin. So let's try to visit it now. 12/home. Oh, it's still, are we logged in here? Okay, I see. It's because we are logged in this other home page. So let's cancel that. And let's cancel this also and try to log in and try to visit the home page again. And let's say /home. It's not redirecting us. Let's check to see why it's not redirecting us. Why do we have this error here? Why is this error here? Okay, so I would like to fix this. Just give me a short while to fix it, and I'll get back to why we have that error. So I have finally found the solution to why when we try to access this page from another tab, it doesn't redirect us. Now the reason why is because we never actually logged out from the first time that we logged in. So there's something we need to do. We need to create a logout view. Remember that from the logout here, remember from Django.contrib.us.authenticate, we imported authenticate, login, and logout. So what we need to do now is actually create a logout view. So we'll come down and say dev logout user, and inside here we'll pass in requests, and we'll put the colon here. And what we need to say is we'll just say logout, and then we'll just say request. So after logging the user out, we now actually want to redirect the person to the login page. So we'll say return redirect, and then where do you want to redirect to? Since we want to redirect to the login page, we'll copy this login page here, and we'll come to the views and paste it inside there. So we're going to redirect the user to the login page. So what we now need to do is we need to go to our index, that is the home page, and we need to create a button for logging out. That is, when you're in the home page, there's going to be a logout button that's going to log out the user. So what we need to do here is that we now need to put button, create a button tag, and inside there we need to create an anchor tag. And inside this anchor tag, we need to link it to our logout view. So hence, before we finish this, we now need to go back to our views and see that, okay, we know that we've created a view for this logout. We now need to create a URL for it. So we will come to our URLs, and after the login, we will now say logout user. So because of that, we need to create a path, and here we will say logout, and then we would pass in the function name, and we would say name is equal to logout. I will say name is equal to logout. So let's go back to our index.html now. So inside this link, we need to link it to this particular logout URL that we just created. So we're going to say percentage, we'll say URL here, then we'll say logout. Is it logout we want to? Yeah. So we'll pass in logout here, and inside the anchor tag we'll just say log out. So once we save now and we reload our page, we're going to see a logout button. So once we click it, we can see it redirects us to the login page. So now that we've logged out, let me close this. Let me log out in my admin so that it doesn't mess with this thing. So now that we have logged out, let's try going to the home page in another tab. So once we try going to the home page, we can see that it's redirecting us to the login page because we've set it in the Views.py that only an authenticated user should be able to view the home page when we pass this decorator in login required. Now remember, in the settings we did login URL is equals to login page because we wanted to define where we want the users to be redirected to if they are not logged in. So if we try again, go to another page, and we try to go to the home page, we can see we are being redirected to the login page. So once we log in now, let's say Digi12, that's the account that I created, Digi12, and we press submit. We can see we're in the home page now and there's logout button. If we click logout, we can see we have been redirected to the login page. Now, how do we actually, the next thing I'm going to talk about is how we can actually restrict some items from being seen on the screen. That is, how will I explain it now? Okay, let's create a new HTML page, a new template. So we're going to just call this test.html. So in this text of HTML, we're going to create a page that everybody can see, both the authenticated and unauthenticated users. So let's just say we'll create a h1 tag and we'll say hello, and then we'll create another h1 tag and then we would say world. So let's save this. For that, we now need to create a new view, and then we're going to say def test, and we'll pass a request, and we're going to say return. Let me just copy this. Ctrl C, Ctrl V. So we're going to say return render test.html. Ctrl save, and for that we need to create a view, so a URL for it. So I'm going to say test. Okay, so we'll put a comma here and we'll say path, and then we'll say test. We want it to be linked to the test URL, and we'll pass in test here as a function, and the name is going to be test. So let's save this now. If we go to /test, okay, our server is still loading. It said logout user is not defined. Where? In our URLs. Logout user. Okay. Logout user. We mistakenly removed it. I mistakenly removed it before. So that should fix the error. Let's break out of the server. Okay. So our server has reloaded. Once we reload, and we can see in the test now we have hello and world. But we actually want to do something now. We want to restrict some things on this page. We want only a logged in user to be able to see this hello and world. But if the user is not logged in, we only want the user to be able to see hello. Now, how can we do that? We can do that by using Django templating language. We are going to write Python inside our template. So what we are going to say here is that we are going to write an if statement to check if the user is authenticated. So we are going to say if user dot is underscore authenticated. Now, anytime we write a conditional, we need to always end the if. So we'll come down here and say end if. So So basically what we're saying is that, okay, if this user is authenticated, display this word. But if the user is not or if the user is not authenticated, display only hello. So if you go back to the page now and reload it, we can see that only hello is displaying. Why? Because we have not logged in. But if we now log in, let's log in another page. If we go there, we can see it's redirecting us. So let's say digit 12, and I log in here also, digit 12, and I submit. If I go to /test, watch what will happen. We can see that I can see hello world, but here it's only hello I can see. So in a case where you have a navigation bar and there are some items there, about us, contact us, and you only want an authorized and authenticated user to be able to view those things, this is exactly how you can do it. You just write a conditional inside and it's going to do all the work for you. So what else do we need to add? We've talked about a lot of things. We've talked about the registering a user. We've talked about logging in. I think that is basically all we need to talk about in this video. Thank you for watching my video, guys. If you like seeing content like this and this was helpful, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more. Tune in to the next video. In the next video, we're going to be talking about how to build a web-based YouTube downloader using Django. So basically what you do is that you come to the website, you paste the link to the YouTube video you want to download, and it's going to download the video for you. Stay tuned and come back for more. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. So let's just check to make sure we're not forgetting anything. So this is our login. If you go to the register, can see this is everything. So thank you for watching, guys.